Hey everyone, welcome to KSSP Podcast Live. I'm Katie. Spencer has the day off today, and we are going to be watching a few videos. I'm going to be starting with the State of the Union here. So we're going to see what President Biden has to say.
President, our First Lady and Second Gentleman, good to see you guys up there. Members of Congress. By the way, Chief Justice, I may need a court order. She gets to go to the game tomorrow, next week. I have to stay home. Got to work something out here. Members of the Cabinet, leaders of our military, Chief Justice, Associate Justice, and retired Justice of the Supreme Court, and to you, my fellow Americans. I start tonight by congratulating the 118th Congress and the new Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. Speaker, I don't want to ruin your reputation, but I look forward to working with you. And I want to congratulate the new leader of the House Democrats, the first African-American minority leader in history, Hakeem Jeffries. He won in spite of the fact I campaigned for him. Congratulations to the longest serving leader in the history of the United States Senate, Mitch McConnell. Where are you, Mitch? And congratulations to Chuck Schumer, another term as Senate Minority Leader. I think you. This time you have a slightly bigger majority, Mr. Leader. You're the majority leader. About that much bigger? Yeah. Well, I tell you what. I want to give special recognition to someone who I think is going to be considered the greatest speaker in the history of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi.
Of course. I am digging her drip here. She's got a nice little... See, I like the pen. She's looking good.
Folks, the story of America is a story of progress and resilience, of always moving forward, of never, ever giving up. It's a story unique among all nations. We're the only country that has emerged from every crisis we've ever entered stronger than we got into it. Look, folks, that's what we're doing again. 2 years ago, the economy was reeling. I stand here tonight after we've created, with the help of many people in this room, 12 million new jobs. More jobs created in 2 years than any president's created in 4 years.
So, apparently, from what I heard, that's not true. That's more than presidents created in 4 years. Who was it? I think it was Bill Clinton. I can't find what I'm looking for right now. So I won't say 100% for sure. But, yeah. I think there's another president who created, just a little bit more than that in 4 years. 12.6 million or something like that.
Because of you all. because of the American people. 2 years ago, COVID had shut down, our businesses were closed, our schools were robbed of so much, and today, COVID no longer controls our lives. And 2 years ago, democracy faced its greatest threat to the Civil War, and today, though bruised, our democracy remains unbowed and unbroken.
Wait, hold on. Did he say we were facing a civil war?
And 2 years ago, COVID had shut down, our businesses were closed, our schools were robbed of so much, and today, COVID no longer controls our lives. And 2 years ago, democracy faced its greatest threat to the Civil War, and today, though bruised, our democracy remains unbowed and unbroken.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There were a lot of candidates in the midterms where, certain candidates were saying that if they didn't win, it would have been election fraud, but, so that was still going on.
As we gather here tonight, we're writing the next chapter in the great American story, a story of progress and resilience. When world leaders ask me to define America, and they do, believe it or not, I say I can define it in one word, and I mean this: possibilities. We don't think anything is beyond our capacity. Everything is a possibility. We're often told that Democrats and Republicans can't work together. But over the past 2 years, we've proved the cynics and naysayers wrong. Yes, we disagreed plenty. And yes, there were times when Democrats went alone. But time and again, Democrats and Republicans came together to defend a stronger and safer Europe. It came together to pass once in a generation infrastructure law, building bridges connecting our nation and our people. We came together to pass the most significant law ever, helping victims exposed to toxic burn pits. And in fact,
Yeah, that feels pretty good. Yeah, everyone's got to clap for that.
I signed over 300 bipartisan pieces of legislation since becoming president. From reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act, the Electoral Count Reform Act, the Respect for Marriage Act that protects the right to marry the person you love. And to my Republican friends, if we could work together the last Congress, there's no reason we can't work together and find consensus on important things in this Congress as well.
Yeah, I mean, who knows how this Congress is going to go, because all I'm saying is Kevin McCarthy does not have as much support as he, wants or needs. But we'll see. We'll see.
Folks, you all are as formed as I am, but I think the people sent us a clear message. Fighting for the sake of fighting. Power for the sake of power, conflict for the sake of conflict gets us nowhere. That's always been my vision of our country, and I know it's many of yours. To restore the soul of this nation, to rebuild the backbone of America, America's middle class, and to unite the country. We've been sent here to finish the job, in my view. For decades, the middle class has been hollowed out in not one administration, but for a long time. Too many good-paying manufacturing jobs move overseas. Factories closed down. Once thriving cities and towns that many of you represent became shadows of what they used to be. And along the way, something else we lost: pride, our sense of self-worth. I ran for president to fundamentally change things, to make sure our economy works for everyone, so we can all feel that pride in what we do.
Yeah, I mean,
to build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down. Because when the middle class does well, the poor have a ladder up, and the wealthy still do very well. We all do well.
I mean, you do also have to address the problems in the working class. You can't just focus on only fixing the middle class and expect everything else to just fall into place. Like, it's kind of about working on the whole system, but it's a start, I guess. I mean, it's still good to work, yeah.
I know a lot of you always kid me for always quoting my dad, but my dad used to say, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. He really would say this. It's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. Yeah. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay, and mean it. Well, folks.
Yeah.
So let's look at the results. We're not finished yet by any stretch of the imagination, but unemployment rate is at 3.4%, a 50-year low.
I mean, that's great and all, but, like, when you look at the people who are underemployed, let's see, like, well, I'm not even gonna try to search that, but, like, the amount of people who are underemployed, like, they're not, paid enough to be able to, what's the term? Shoot. Oh, I'm blanking on the term. Basically, like, be able to live comfortably. Oh, lovely. Okay. Anyways, sorry, I was reading the chat there for a second. But yeah, like the amount of people who like don't even have enough money for like a $400 emergency is like over 50%, I think. I'll look that one up. It's okay. 40%. It's 40% of Americans cannot afford a $400 emergency, and it says they blame debt as well, which there's a lot of different kinds of debt, from bank loans to credit card debt to medical debt to like shoot, what was I gonna say? Oh my gosh. Sorry, I am just blanking out today, I guess. What up, Spencer? So, yeah, the people who can't, Americans, there are 40% of Americans who cannot afford a $400 emergency, and they blame debt, but then there's all different kinds of debt, and then there's also predatory loans as well. That's what I was going to say, was the predatory loans. So yeah, like there's a lot of debt that prevents people from being able to live comfortably, and like because they can't pay off the debt because they don't make enough money, and obviously if they're taking on debt they need the money, so people are not necessarily getting paid enough all the time.
Near record.
Oh, and it doesn't even include the gig economy workers either, who like oftentimes they don't have benefits, or like they're independent contractors, So they're not employees. They don't get the employee benefits. And they don't necessarily have to make minimum wage because they're contracting. So like you can take sometimes they'll send you like they'll send you an order and they'll offer to pay $2.50 to go like 13 miles. And so, yeah, what happens with that is that the drivers end up relying on tips to make their money. And so when you don't tip, like your order's going to get cold most likely, unless you get lucky, because most people are going to decline that order if you're not tipping for someone to go 13 miles, But like really at the same time, well, you should, at this point, you should be tipping your drivers to help them make their living if you're going to use a service like DoorDash, in my opinion. But, ultimately, we need to change it so that they don't have to rely on tips and they can actually get paid fair wages. So, yeah, there's that as well.
Record unemployment. Near record unemployment for black and Hispanic workers. We've already created, your help, 800,000 good-paying manufacturing jobs, the fastest growth in 40 years. And where is it written?
Is that true?
Where is it written that America can't lead the world in manufacturing? And I don't know where that's written. For too many decades, we imported projects and exported jobs. Now, thanks to what you've all done, we're exporting American products and creating American jobs.
Okay.
Folks,
I understand if that's true.
Inflation has been a global problem because the pandemic disrupted our supply chains, and Putin's unfair and brutal war in Ukraine disrupted energy supplies as well as food supplies.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the inflation, of course, but, that's not the only reason prices are going up at the same time. Prices, and that's ultimately what's really important, is what's the price of what you're buying and how does it compare to what you're making and what you have. And we just see profits skyrocket for certain energy companies, certain gas companies, just trying to increase their profits, because that's how it goes, I guess.
Blocking all that grain in Ukraine. But we're better positioned than any country on earth right now. But we have more to do. But here at home, inflation is coming down. Here at home, gas prices are down $1.50 from their peak. Food inflation is coming down. Not fast enough, but coming down. Inflation has fallen every month for the last 6 months.
Okay. Has inflation fallen every month for the last 6 months? Okay, let me see. Okay. Here we go. From Trading Economics. Okay. So that is true. Awesome. Well, that's good, I guess.
While take-home pay has gone up. Additionally, over the last 2 years, a record 10 million Americans applied to start new businesses. 10 million. And by the way...
Oh, why? Oh, sorry about that. I don't know why that happened.
Every time someone starts a small business is an act of hope. And Madam Vice President, I want to thank you for leading that effort to ensure that small businesses have access to capital and the historic laws we enacted that are going to just come into being. Standing here last year, I shared with you a story of American genius and possibilities. Semiconductors, small computer chips the size of a fingerprint that power everything from cell phones to automobiles and so much more. These chips were invented in America. Let's get that straight. They were invented in America. We used to make 40% of the world's chips. In the last several decades, we lost our edge. We're down to only producing 10%. We all saw what happened during the pandemic when chip factories shut down overseas. Today's automobiles need 3,000 chips, each of those automobiles. But American automobiles couldn't make enough cars because there weren't enough chips. Car prices went up, people got laid off. So did everything from refrigerators to cell phones. We can never let that happen again. That's why we came together to pass the Bipartisan Chips and Science Act.
Chips and Science Act? What is this? A federal statute enacted. It provides roughly $280 billion in new funding to boost domestic research and manufacturing of semiconductors in the United States. Okay. Cool. Oh my God.
Folks, I know I've been criticized for saying this, but I'm not changing my view. We're going to make sure the supply chain for America begins in America. The supply chain begins in America. We've already created 800,000 new manufacturing jobs without this law, before the law kicks in. With this new law, we're going to create hundreds of thousands of new jobs across the country. And I mean all across the country, throughout not just the coast, but through the middle of the country as well. That's going to come from companies that have announced more than $300 billion in investment in American manufacturing over the next few years. Outside of Columbus, Ohio, Intel is building semiconductor factories on 1,000 acres, literally a field of dreams. It's going to create 10,000 jobs, that one investment. 7,000 construction jobs, 3,000 jobs in those factories once they're finished. They call them factories. Jobs paying an average of $130,000 a year, and many do not require a college degree.
Okay.
Jobs.
Please.
Because we work together, these jobs where people don't have to leave home to search for opportunity. It's just getting started. Think about the new homes, the small businesses, the medium-sized businesses. So much more that's going to be needed to support those 3,000 permanent jobs and the factories that are going to be built. Talk to mayors and governors, Democrats and Republicans, and they'll tell you what this means for their communities. We're seeing these field of dreams transform to the heartland. But to maintain the strongest economy in the world, we need the best infrastructure in the world. And folks, as you all know, we used to be #1 in the world in infrastructure. We've sunk to 13th in the world. The United States of America, 13th. in the world in infrastructure, modern infrastructure. But now we're coming back because we came together and passed the bipartisan infrastructure law, the largest investment in infrastructure since President Eisenhower's interstate highway system.
Wait, hold on.
In the world. And folks, as you all know, we used to be #1 in the world in infrastructure. We've sunk to 13th in the world. The United States of America, 13th in the world in infrastructure, modern infrastructure. But now we're coming back because we came together and passed the bipartisan infrastructure law, the largest investment in infrastructure since President Eisenhower's interstate highway system.
Is that true?
And folks, already we've funded over 20,000 projects, including major airports from Boston to Atlanta to Portland. Projects that are going to put thousands of people to work rebuilding our highways, our bridges, our railroads, our tunnels, ports, airports, clean water, high-speed internet, all across America.
High-speed internet? Is that going to be free or... That's pretty dope. But yeah. No, he's probably just talking about building the infrastructure for higher-speed internet, I'm assuming. Since it relates to the infrastructure bill, I would think.
Urban, rural, tribal. And folks, we're just getting started. We're just getting started. And I mean it sincerely. I want to thank my Republican friends who voted for the law, and my Republican friends who voted against it as well. But I still get asked to fund the projects in those districts as well. But don't worry. I promised I'd be a president for all Americans. We'll fund these projects. And I'll see you at the groundbreaking.
Oh, he's proud of that one.
Look.
And then, yeah, just look at Kevin McCarthy. So bored.
This law will further unite all of America. Projects
good.
like Brent Spence Bridge in Kentucky over the Ohio River, built 60 years ago, badly needed repairs, one of the nation's most congested freight.
The difference in their faces, you can just tell, you know, that they're definitely feeling some different emotions from each other.
Routes carrying $2 billion worth of freight every single day across the Ohio River. And folks, I've been talking about fixing it for decades, but we're really finally going to get it done. I went there last month with Democrats and Republicans and from both states to deliver a commitment of $1.6 billion for this project.
Okay.
And while I was there, I met a young woman named Sarah, who's here tonight. I don't know where Sarah is. Is she up in the box? I don't know. Sarah, how are you? Well, Sarah, for 30 years, I learned, she told me she'd been a proud member of the Iron Workers Local 44, known as the Cowboys in the Sky. The folks who built Cincinnati's skyline. Sarah said she can't wait to be 10 stories above the Ohio River building that new bridge. God bless her. That's pride. And that's what we're also building. We're building back pride. Look, we're also replacing poisonous lead pipes that go into 10 million homes in America. 400,000 school and child care centers. So every child in America can drink the water instead of having permanent damage to their brain.
Yeah, it's probably good if we actually got done.
We're making sure that every community in America has access to affordable high-speed internet. No parent should have to drive by McDonald's parking lot to help them do their homework.
Oh, he did mean free internet. Okay. Well, bet that. Let's get that cracking. Because, yeah, I agree. You know, people shouldn't have to, take the bus to the library just to use the internet. But, yeah.
Work online with their kids, which many thousands were doing across the country.
I mean, I don't agree with everything Joe Biden does or has done in the past. Definitely not everything he's done in the past. But, that doesn't mean that there aren't baby steps that are being taken, even if it's, nowhere near every solution, obviously, but...
And when we do these projects, and again I get criticized for this, but I make no excuses for it, we're going to buy American. We're going to buy American. Folks, and it's totally consistent with international trade rules. Buy America has been the law since 1933.
I am not a politician, obviously, but that doesn't mean that, I don't have my opinions, and if you disagree, that's fine. Perfectly fine to disagree, and we can talk about anything, or, I can just keep watching the video, whatever, but, yeah.
But for too long, past administrations, Democrat and Republican, have fought to get around it. Not anymore. Tonight, I'm announcing new standards require all construction materials used in federal infrastructure projects to be made in America. Made in America. I mean it. Lumber.
Yeah.
Glass, drywall, fiber optic cable. And on my watch, American roads, bridges, and American highways are going to be made with American products as well. Folks, my economic plan is about investing in places and people that have been forgotten. So many of you listening to you tonight, I know you feel it. So many of you felt like you've just simply been forgotten. Amid the economic upheaval of the past 4 decades, too many people have been left behind and treated like they're invisible. Maybe that's you watching from home. Remember the jobs that went away. You remember them, don't you? The folks at home remember them. You wonder whether the path even exists anymore for your children to get ahead without having to move away. Well, that's why I get that. That's why we're building an economy where no one's left behind. Jobs are coming back. Pride is coming back. Because choices we made in the last several years. This is, in my view, a blue-collar blueprint to rebuild America, make a real difference in your lives at home.
I'm not a pundit or anything, I don't know. I don't consider myself one. I say my opinions, and, yeah, I mean, we do other stuff on the podcast, too. This isn't a politics-only channel. That's just the focus for today. I mean, we do all kinds of stuff. I mean, we talk about history, and we do certain hobbies sometimes. There's all kinds of stuff we do. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and we have a lot more content on our YouTube channel. That's kind of our primary place we go. We kind of stream every other weekend now, just as a little bit of extra content.
For example, too many of you lay in bed at night like my dad did.
Yeah, thank you.
Staring at the ceiling, wondering what in God's name happens if your spouse gets cancer, or your child gets deadly ill, or something happens to you. What are you going to have? You get money to pay for those medical bills? Or you're going to have to sell the house or try to get a second mortgage on it. I get it. With the Inflation Reduction Act that I signed into law, we're taking on powerful interests to bring healthcare costs down so you can sleep better at night with more security. You know, we pay more for prescription drugs than any nation in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think he takes healthcare far enough. Personally, I believe that a universal healthcare system is pretty optimal, and we actually did a video on that before. That's on a YouTube channel. But yeah, actually, like when you look at the numbers, the universal healthcare ends up saving people money from what we had researched. Well, researched is a little bit, of a loaded term. I'll say what we just looked up, pretty much.
You say it again. We pay more for prescription drugs than any major nation on earth. For example, 1 in 10 Americans has diabetes. Many of you in this chamber do, and
That's
in the
me.
audience. But every day, millions need insulin to control their diabetes so they can literally stay alive. Insulin's been around for over 100 years. The guy who invented it didn't even patent it because he wanted it to be available for everyone.
Yep, that's true, and we should listen to him.
It costs the drug companies roughly $10 a vial to make that insulin. Packaging it all, you may get up to $13. But Big Pharma has been unfairly charging people hundreds of dollars, $400 to $500 a month,
It's
making
true.
record profits. Not anymore. Not anymore.
What's he gonna do about it?
So many things that we did are only now coming to fruition. We said we were doing this, and we said we passed the law to do it, but people didn't know because the law didn't take effect until January 1 of this year. We capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors on Medicare.
I mean, it's a start, I guess, but it's just, why not for, everyone? Why only seniors is my question. I mean, I get why, you have to make compromises or whatever, but it's just, I just don't understand, like, how people don't consider, like, how some people don't consider healthcare right. Because, I mean, it's, for a lot of people, it's necessary to live, or at the very least, necessary to function.
People are just finding out. I'm sure you're getting the same calls I'm getting. Look, there are millions of other Americans who do not or are not on Medicare, including 200,000 young people with type 1 diabetes and need this insulin to stay alive. Let's finish the job this time. Let's cap the cost of insulin for everybody at $35.
Okay, so he is trying to do that.
Folks, the Big Pharma's still going to do very well, I promise you all. I promise you they're going to do very well.
Okay.
This law also caps and won't even go into effect until 2025. Costs, out-of-pocket drug costs for seniors on Medicare at a maximum of $2,000 a year. You don't have to pay more than $2,000 a year, no matter how much your drug costs are. Because you know why? You all know it. Many of you, like many in my family, have cancer. You know the drugs can range from $10,000, $11,000, $14,000, $15,000 for the cancer drugs. If drug prices rise faster than inflation, drug companies are going to have to pay Medicare back the difference. We're finally giving Medicare the power to negotiate drug prices. Bringing down Bringing down prescription drug costs doesn't just save seniors money. It cuts the federal deficit by billions of dollars, by hundreds of billions of dollars. Because these prescription drugs are drugs purchased by Medicare to keep their commitment to the seniors. Well, guess what? Instead of paying $400 or $500 a month, you're paying $15. That's a lot of savings for the federal government. And by the way, why wouldn't we want that? Now, some members here are threatening, and I know it's not an official party position, so I'm not going to exaggerate.
I think I've seen this clip.
But threatening to repeal the Inflation Reduction Act. As my coach, that's okay. That's fair.
Oh my God.
As my football coach used to say, lots of luck in your senior year. Make no mistake. If you try anything to raise the cost of prescription drugs, I will veto it.
Okay.
Look.
Let's see. Alright, well, we can look it up actually. Inflation Reduction Act. Because I don't want to butcher this here. So it aims to curb inflation by reducing the deficit, lowering prescription drug prices, and investing into domestic energy production while promoting clean energy. So, let's see. Summary of the act here. So, lower consumer energy costs. Let me see here. So what does the Inflation Act do? So it lowers costs for small businesses. It will reduce costs for small businesses by maintaining lower healthcare costs, supporting energy-saving investments, and bolstering supply chain resiliency. Yeah, so it sounds like it basically allows the government to negotiate prices with the pharmaceutical companies, I think. I think that's how they're reducing the healthcare costs. Yeah, and then they're doing a couple other things too, just with energy and then supply chain resiliency there. So yeah, I guess people... yeah, I'm pretty sure it passed. So yeah, people want to repeal it, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it passed and people are against it. I'm assuming because it has to do with who pays them, you know, like which companies are paying these people. And I mean, that's really what a lot of it comes down to. You know, like some people might be paid by the pharmaceutical companies, and so they don't want an act that's going to allow them to lower the prices. Or, you know, they may be working with like big oil, or, you know, so they wouldn't want to switch to like renewable energy. So basically, these politicians do not care about the people. They will spread propaganda to try to make other people like basically have the same beliefs as them. Like for example, they'll say that things like, you know, long wait time. If we have universal health care, we'll have long wait times. And saying things like that discourages people from wanting to improve the healthcare system because they think it's going to harm them when really it's not. Like, it's basically just people lying very convincingly to the public. So that's why, you know, they have their supporters, their constituents who vote for them, and that's how they get into power, is by spreading A lot of it's propaganda. But yeah, basically the politicians want to repeal it because of, a lot of it comes down to who they're getting paid by. That would be most of it.
I'm pleased to say that more Americans...
Yeah, when they run their campaigns, it's perfectly legal for them to lie to people. I mean, I think just about every politician has technically lied, in their campaigns. Like, maybe not Bernie, I don't know. Maybe Bernie has, I don't know for sure. I haven't seen every single Bernie clip, but yeah, I would say for the most part, like, most politicians lie to get into those positions of power because they want to just try to convince people to vote for them. Because sometimes they can just say, oh, well, I tried to pass this law, but Congress prevented me. And sometimes that actually does happen. But, like, because it's not, just a single politician deciding everything. Like, you have to compromise with people. So you're not always going to reach your goals anyways. But then, yeah, sometimes people just outright lie in the sense that they don't have any sort of plan to fulfill their promises, or they're just lying about it and they don't intend to work on the problem. I mean, there's not legislation against it, like, partially just because, you can't, like, determine someone's intention, like, in a legal sense, necessarily. I mean, yeah, I guess not in this situation, like, because it's such an internal thing, but, because sometimes it really does just have to do with, like, the bureaucracy of it all. But it's just hard to legally determine that line. I think that's why it's hard to make legislation around. And I'm not saying that there should or shouldn't be, because, that's something I would have to think about a little bit more. Like, but, and then part of it also is just because it benefits the politicians as well to be able to lie like that. And so, of course, people aren't, no one would want to vote on a bill like that is a politician. So that makes it difficult. Oh, yeah, totally. Throw everyone who lies. Throw them in prison. For sure. Yeah, I get what you're saying now, though. Okay. But, yeah. I mean, it's still, there's still people who have, like, just say stuff they don't even intend to do. And, that still sucks. But obviously you can't write legislation around that.
Have health insurance now than ever in history. A record 16 million people are enrolled in the Affordable Care Act. And thanks to the law I signed last year, saving millions are saving $800 a year on their premiums.
I mean, honestly, like, on a public level, what we can do as citizens, well, part of it individually as a voter, you want to make sure that you're skeptical of everyone a little bit, but not to a conspiracy degree, but, like, just a little bit, like, question the facts you hear and, look up things online, or not just online, know how to look through resources as well. That's really important, is knowing how to spot misinformation. And, that can be really hard to do sometimes. I mean, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. We should definitely hold them accountable for their claims, for sure. Like, if, we can tell they're not really making any kind of effort to fulfill their promises, yeah, definitely calling them out on it can be good. But, I mean, like, as far as, like, legal punishment, like, or anything like that, like, I don't think you can necessarily enact that all the time, but, like, holding them accountable to their claims, and the best way you can do that, if you're able to vote, is to not vote for them next time and vote for somebody else. Like, that's really the way that the government works currently. Like, your power is within your vote, but at the same time, not everyone has equal voting rights necessarily either, depending on where you are in the country.
By the way, that law was written and the benefit expires in 2025. So my plea to some of you, at least in this audience, let's finish the job and make these savings permanent. Expand coverage of Medicaid. Look, the Inflation Reduction Act is also the most significant investment ever in climate change. Ever. Lowering utility bills, creating American jobs, leading the world to a clean energy future. I visited the devastating aftermath of record floods, droughts, storms, and wildfires from Arizona to Mexico to all the way up to the Canadian border. More timber has been burned, that I've observed from helicopters, than the...
So, okay, basically the guy on the right, that's Kevin McCarthy. He is the Republican Speaker of the House. And because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are Democrats, that's basically why he's not standing up and clapping. Because the Republicans they want to give as little praise to the Democratic Party as possible, instead of, trying to work together and unify. They're very stubborn in that sense.
Entire state of Missouri. And we don't have global warming? Not a problem. In addition to emergency recovery, from Puerto Rico to Florida to Idaho, we're rebuilding for the long term. New electric grids that are able to weather major storms and not prevent those forest fires. Roads and water systems withstand the next big flood. Clean energy to cut pollution and create jobs in communities often left behind. We're going to build 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations installed across the country by tens of thousands of IBEW workers. And we're helping families save more than $1,000 a year with tax credits to purchase electric vehicles and efficient appliances, energy efficient appliances. Historic.
Yeah, just don't get a Tesla, because at least not a self-driving one, because I've seen a couple of those videos with the accidents where the self-driving just malfunctions out of nowhere and causes a car accident. So yeah, but there are other electric vehicles on the market besides Teslas that you can get, though.
Conservation efforts to be responsible stewards of our land. Let's face reality. The climate crisis doesn't care if you're in a red or blue state. It's an existential threat. We have an obligation, not to ourselves, but to our children and grandchildren, to confront it. I'm proud of how America at last is stepping up to the challenge. We're still going to need oil and gas for a while. But guess what? No, we do.
Okay, now he's clapping.
But there's so much more to do. We got to finish the job.
Yeah.
And we pay for these investments in our future by finally making the wealthiest and biggest corporations begin to pay their fair share. Just begin.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a capitalist. I'm a capitalist, but pay your fair share. I think a lot of you at home agree with me and many people that you know.
Okay.
The tax system is not fair. It is not fair.
Yeah.
Look, the idea that in 2020, 55 of the largest corporations in America, the Fortune 500, made $40 billion in profits and paid zero in federal taxes?
So, okay. Yeah, basically, like, a lot of it comes down to the rich want to stay rich. And once again, like, when you're being paid by large corporations, that's basically kind of a deal that they make that, okay, now I'm going to vote for laws in your favor. And it's basically legal bribery. It's lobbying. But it's legal bribery, basically. And so these politicians are like, oh, yeah, I don't want to upset these large corporations that just financed me. So I'm going to vote for laws in their favor. And it should not be legal at all. And then there's also just the capitalist mindset, too, of, like, like, the people at the top deserve everything they make when the people at the bottom don't. Like, in their eyes. Or they don't see the value in lower wage workers, and so they think the people at the top just work 301 times harder because that's how much more they're being paid than their lowest wage workers, is 301 times their salary. When, I don't think they're doing 301 times the amount of work. So paying their fair share back into the tax system to help fix systemic problems, if those tax dollars are being utilized in the right way, of course, then, yeah, like, that is definitely a fair system. And, like, honestly, like, getting rid of lobbying would really help a few more people be able to vote in the people's favor rather than in the corporation's favor.
Zero? Folks, it's simply not fair. But now, because of the law I signed, billion-dollar companies have to pay a minimum of 15%. God love them. 15%. That's less than a nurse pays. Let me be crystal clear. I said at the very beginning, under my plans, as long as I'm president, nobody earning less than $400,000 will pay an additional penny in taxes. Nobody, not one penny. But let's finish the job. There's more to do. We have to reward work, not just wealth.
Yeah.
Pass my proposal for the billionaire minimum tax. There's 1,000 billionaires in America. It's up from about 600 in the beginning of the term. But no billionaire should be paying a lower tax rate than a school teacher or firefighter. I mean it. Think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, look. I know you aren't enthusiastic about that, but think about it. Think about it. Have you noticed Big Oil just reported its profits, record profits? Last year they made $200 billion in the midst of a global energy crisis. I think it's outrageous. Why? They invested too little of that profit to increase domestic production. And when I talk to a couple of them, they say, we're afraid you're going to shut down all the oil wells, all the oil refineries anyway, so why should we invest in them? I said, we're going to need oil for at least another decade. And that's going to exceed and beyond that.
Oh. We're gonna yeah, of course they're laughing at that. But, I guess we'll see. We'll see where things take us. We'll see how different positions are filled over the next few years and, what kind of bills are going to get passed.
Production. If they had, in fact, invested in the production to keep gas prices down, instead, they used the record profits to buy back their own stock.
Also, do the people laughing think that the oil is going to last forever? Because it's not. So, yeah, we are eventually going to have to move away from oil at some point because we're going to run out of oil. That's just how that works.
Rewarding the CEOs and shareholders. Corporations ought to do the right thing. That's why I propose we quadruple the tax on corporate stock buybacks and encourage long-term investments. they'll still make considerable profit. Let's finish the job and close the loophole to allow very wealthy to avoid paying their taxes. Instead of cutting the number of audits for wealthy taxpayers, I just signed a law to reduce the deficit by $114 billion by cracking down on wealthy tax cheats. That's being fiscally responsible. In the last 2 years, my administration has cut the deficit by more than $1.7 trillion. The largest deficit reduction in American history.
I'm going to look that up. Is that true? Let's see. No. Okay. Let's see here. Oh. I want to see. Let's see. Okay. What date was this written on? Oh, that's last year. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Okay, it sounds like this is true, according to Politico. They didn't say it's false, so I'm going to assume it's true for now.
Under the previous administration, the American deficit went up 4 years in a row. Because those record deficits, no president added more to the national debt in any 4 years than my predecessor. Nearly 25% of the entire national debt that took over 200 years to accumulate was added by just one administration alone, the last one. They're the facts. Check it out.
Oh, wow.
Check it out.
Okay. Trump deficit increase. I'm going to go with Politico again. Yeah. Yeah, debt growing toward a record level. Yeah, it amounts to 98% of the GDP. Although we do talk about how, we did have an episode, we did talk about how the deficit going up is not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's more about what are you spending that money on. But the problem with our deficit going up is we're not spending it on the right things. We're not spending it on the people. We're not spending it to help people very much. Like, we're mostly spending on the military, really. And a lot of that money goes to waste on, things like tanks that get shipped out and then they don't even get used, and they just get, blown up or abandoned. And no one ever even used them, and, tank costs a lot of money. So the thing about paying the deficit back, there's kind of a social contract, but, in reality, we don't necessarily need to pay it all back. It's complicated. Honestly, I don't know if I could do it justice right now. I would have to look some stuff up, but, yeah, just... we do contractually, technically at one point, but there's no deadline for when we have to pay it back, is what the thing really is. It's not okay, you have to pay it back on this date, or else we're, I don't even know what they would do. Hopefully not, start a war or anything. That would be really bad, but, they could, they could start charging us more for importing products into their country, or, they could just cut off business with us completely. That would be really disastrous for both countries, though, so I don't think they would do that. But, yeah, it's more just there's not a deadline to pay it back, I guess. But, if you are accumulating a deficit and you are spending the money on good things, social programs and things like that, resources for people, to help people, people will be more productive in society, which will increase our GDP. It'll increase the amount of money we have. And, eventually, if we do pay off that debt, then we would have more of the means to do so if we do build up our social infrastructure and our economic infrastructure as well.
How did Congress respond to that debt? They did the right thing. They lifted the debt ceiling 3 times without preconditions or crisis. They paid American bills to prevent an economic disaster in the country. So tonight I'm asking the Congress to follow suit. Let's commit here tonight to the full faith and credit of the United States of America will never, ever be questioned. Some of my Republican friends want to take the economy hostage. I get it, unless I agree to their economic plans. All of you at home should know what those plans are. Instead of making the wealthy pay their fair share, some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset.
Yeah, they're trying to get rid of, some of them are trying to get rid of Social Security and Medicare. So, that's real nice. Great way to try to, really help your constituents.
I'm not saying it's a majority.
Yeah, this is where they boo him. I remember this clip.
Anybody who doubts it, contact my office.
Oh,
I'll
shit.
give you a copy.
Yeah, and she just shouted liar.
That means Congress doesn't vote. Well, I'm glad to see
Yeah.
you. No, I tell you, I enjoy conversion. It means if Congress doesn't keep the programs the way they are, they'd go away. Other Republicans say, I'm not saying it's a majority of you. I don't even think it's even a significant, but it's being proposed by individuals. I'm not politely not naming them, but it's being proposed.
What a gentleman.
Look, folks, the idea is.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Spencer. I'm going to read this out loud. Spencer says, government debt does matter, but we need to shift our understanding. Government debt is nothing like personal debt because the federal government can issue more money. Nonetheless, it's not the imbalance between taxes collected and federal money spent that matters. Rather, what matters is the balance of real resources to avoid generating bottlenecks and the threat of inflation. Just a note. Yeah. So my normal co-host Spencer just made a really good point here. Because, yeah, basically, because the government is the entity that creates the money, debt is not the same for the government because the government can always print more money. And yes, there are complications that can come with that, but that doesn't mean that that's not within their capabilities. Like, if you take on debt from let's say a bank, like, you can't just go home and like print more money in your office. Like, that's counterfeit and that's illegal. So it's not actual money. And so that's what makes it different than the government. Like, you have to actually go out and, raise that money, however you do.
That we're not going to be moved into being threatened to default on the debt if we don't respond. Folks, as we all apparently agree, Social Security and Medicare is off the books now, right? They're not to be stopped. All right. I'm ready. We got unanimity. Social Security and Medicare are a lifeline for millions of seniors. Americans have to pay into them from the very first paycheck they started. So tonight, let's all agree, and we apparently are, let's stand up for seniors. Stand up and show them. We will not cut Social Security. We will not cut Medicare. Those benefits belong to the American people. They earned it. And if anyone tries to cut Social Security, which apparently no one's going to do, and if anyone tries to cut Medicare, I'll stop them. I'll veto it. And look, I'm not going to allow them to be taken away. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. But apparently it's not going to be a problem. Next month, when I offer my fiscal plan, I ask my Republican friends to lay down their plan as well. I really mean it. Let's sit down together and discuss our mutual plans together. Let's do that.
Okay. So basically, they claim, I don't know why. I don't know why they claim we can default on debt. But that's something I have to look into a little more, honestly. I mean, Spencer might be able to help me, but yeah, I would definitely have to do a little bit of research myself to answer that question.
I can tell you, the plan I'm going to show you is going to cut the deficit by another $2 trillion. And it won't cut a single bit of Medicare or Social Security. In fact, we're going to...
Yeah, so Spencer said he thinks it's a manipulation tactic personally. Yeah, basically just, trying to convince people to ride along with what they're doing. I mean, yeah, and he says he could be wrong. But, I mean, I think that's a reasonable thing to think, though.
Extend the Medicare Trust Fund at least 2 decades. Because that's going to be the next argument. How do we keep it solvent, right? Well, we'll not raise tax on anyone making under 400 grand, but we'll pay for it the way we talked about tonight, by making sure that the wealthy and big corporations pay their fair share. Look. Here's the deal. They aren't just taking advantage of the tax code. They're taking advantage of you, the American consumer. Here's my message to all of you out there. I have your back. We're already preventing Americans from receiving surprise medical bills. stopping $1 billion surprise bills per month so far. We're protecting seniors' life savings by cracking down on nursing homes that commit fraud, endanger patient safety, prescribe drugs that...
Just a pro tip, it's not only nursing homes that, are accused of fraud in the health industry, but, nursing homes certainly are. A lot of them are accused of fraud. Well, I don't know about a lot, but definitely a good handful of them, for sure.
That are not needed. Millions of Americans can now save thousands of dollars because they can finally get a hearing aid over the counter without a prescription.
Oh, that's pretty dope.
Look,
I'm down with that.
Capitalism without competition is not capitalism. It's extortion.
Yeah.
It's exploitation.
Wow. He's being pretty based today. I'm surprised. All right.
Last year, I cracked down with the help of many of you on foreign shipping companies that were making you pay higher prices for every good coming into the country. I signed a bipartisan bill that cut shipping costs by 90%, helping American farmers, businessmen, and consumers. Let's finish the job. Pass the bipartisan legislation to strengthen antitrust enforcement and prevent big online platforms from giving their own products an unfair advantage. My administration is also taking on junk fees, those hidden surcharges too many companies use to make you pay more. For example, we're making airlines show you the full ticket price up front, refund your money if your flight is canceled or delayed. We've reduced exorbitant bank overdrafts by saving consumers more than $1 billion a year.
Okay.
We're cutting credit card late fees by 75% from $30 to $8. Look.
That's pretty good.
Junk fees
don't know who would complain about that.
May not matter to the very wealthy, but they matter to most other folks in homes like the one I grew up in, like many of you did. They add up to hundreds of dollars a month. They make it harder for you to pay your bills or afford that family trip. I know how unfair it feels when a company overcharges you and gets away with it. Not anymore. We've written a bill to stop it all. It's called the Junk Fee Prevention Act. We're going to ban surprise resort fees that hotels charge on your bill. Those fees can cost you up to $90 a night at hotels that aren't even resorts. The idea.
This stuff is, great and all, but I think, and maybe he'll mention some of this a little bit later. I don't know. I haven't watched this, but helping with things like, rent, for example. Regulating rent would be a really big one. Like things that aren't just helping people who can afford vacations, because not everyone can even afford the vacation with these new laws in place. Not even close.
That cable, internet, and cell phone companies can charge you $200 or more if you decide to switch to another provider. Give me a break. We can stop service fees on tickets to concerts and sporting events and make companies disclose all the fees up front.
Yeah.
And we'll prohibit airlines from charging $50 round trip for family just to be able to sit together. Baggage fees are bad enough. Airlines can't treat your child like a piece of baggage. Americans are tired of being. We're tired of being played for suckers. So pass the Junk Fee Prevention Act so companies stop ripping us off. For too long, workers have been getting stiffed, but not anymore. We're beginning to restore the dignity of work. For example, I should have known this, but I didn't until 2 years ago. 30 million workers have to sign non-compete agreements for the jobs they take. 30 million. So a cashier at a burger place can't walk across town and take the same job at another burger place and make a few bucks more. It just changed.
Wait, what?
They just changed it because
I'm sorry, I have to rewind that.
So
I have to
companies
rewind
stop ripping us off. For too long, workers have been getting stiffed, but not anymore. We're beginning to restore the dignity of work. For example, I should have known this, but I didn't until 2 years ago. 30 million workers have to sign non-compete agreements for the jobs they take. 30 million. So a cashier at a burger place can't walk across town and take the same job at another burger place and make a few bucks more. It just changed. But they just changed it because we exposed it. That was part of the deal, guys. Look it up. But not anymore. We're banning those agreements, so companies have to compete for workers and pay them what they're worth.
Yeah. That's a start, but that's not going to necessarily make people pay workers what they're worth. There definitely needs to be more regulation in terms of that, more legislation. If we're going to live in a capitalist society, then like a livable minimum wage needs to be set in place at the very least, and obviously more social safety nets need to be put in place too, but that's a different conversation.
And I must tell you, this is bound to get a response from my friends on my left but the right. I'm so sick and tired of companies breaking the law by preventing workers from organizing. Pass the PRO Act, because business have a right.
And of course Kevin McCarthy is shaking his head.
Workers have a right to form a union.
Like, how can you be against unions? Like, okay, if you're truly capitalist, then you should want unions in place because it actually gives the worker more bargaining power. The employees get more bargaining power instead of the owners having all of the bargaining power. Like, and they're not, unions don't even ask for much. The reason unions would ruin the relationship between workers and the owners has nothing to do with the workers. It has to do with the owners. Because the owners get resentful because they want to make as much money as they possibly can. And they don't want to sacrifice any money to pay workers what they're actually worth. And so really the problem is with the system. And I personally think that at the very least there should be some kind of democracy in the workplace where workers can actually vote. Like, all workers have a say in what happens in the organization and not just the people at the top. Because, the people at the bottom are really, running a lot of the business that the people at the top, they don't see that side of the business. And so they're not going to be making the best decisions all the time when it comes to those, policies that do affect those workers that are on the lower level of the hierarchy.
And let's guarantee all workers have a...
So most media outlets, they make I wouldn't say, I guess I haven't seen a lot in the news about the unions personally, but I would imagine it would have to do with just who funds the media. So a lot of media is funded by people who are more right-wing and more against unions. And so they're going to want to run stories that make unions out to be bad. Like, that would be what I would imagine is happening in those cases.
Living wage. Let's make sure working parents can afford to raise a family with sick days, paid family medical leave, affordable child care.
Yeah.
That's going to enable millions of more people to go and stay at work. And let's restore the full child tax credit, which gave tens of millions of parents some breathing room and cut child poverty in half to the lowest level in history. And by the way, when we do all these things, we increase productivity. We increase economic growth. So let's finish the job and get more families access to affordable, quality housing.
With the railway union, so I don't think they got, and I'm trying to remember, I think they got one day for sick leave or something ridiculous like that. I'm just gonna type that. No, that's not what I want. Okay. Yeah, okay. So they got a 24% pay increase over 5 years from 2020 to 2024. And then one extra paid day off, yeah. So it looks, I mean, it's not terrible. I mean, that only one extra paid day off is pretty bad. But the pay increase isn't like terrible, but yeah, just they deserve more than one paid day off. Like, that's not very much at all. I mean, you know, like because things happen, you know, like you get sick, you have an emergency, you know, whatever, and you can't go to work. First of all, like, you're gonna need to still have that money to survive. And I think that the least that companies could do for people who dedicate, you know, 40 plus hours of their week every week to helping their company thrive, they definitely deserve to have a few days where they don't have to worry about not being able to pay the bills because they got sick, or because their kid is in the hospital, or, you know, because, like, I don't know, like, all kinds of emergencies can happen, is what I'm saying. And all kinds of, you know, people shouldn't have to worry if something happens that, like, they won't be able to pay their rent because they had an emergency or because they're sick. So they definitely deserve more than one extra paid day off. But yeah, so that's what happened with the railway union, basically. With the strike, rather.
Housing. Let's get seniors who want to stay in their homes the care they need to do so. Let's give more breathing room to millions of family caregivers looking after their loved ones. Pass my plan so we get seniors and people with disabilities the home care and services they need. And support the workers who are doing God's work. These plans are fully paid for and we can afford to do them. Restoring the dignity of work means making education an affordable ticket to the middle class. You know, when we made public education, 12 years of it universal in the last century, we made the best educated, best paid, we became the best educated, best paid nation in the world. But the rest of the world's caught up. It's caught up. Jill, my wife, who teaches full time, has an expression. I hope I get it right, kid. Any nation that out-educates us is going to out-compete us.
Yeah.
Any nation out-educates is going to out-compete us. Folks, we all know 12 years of education is not enough to win the economic competition of 21st century.
True.
We want to have the best educated workforce. Let's finish the job by providing access to preschool for 3 and 4 years old.
I mean, that too.
Studies show that children who go to preschool are nearly 50% more likely to finish high school and go on to earn a 2 or 4 year degree, no matter their background they came from. Let's give public school teachers a raise.
Yeah. 100%. Okay.
We're making progress. by reducing student debt, increasing Pell Grants for working and middle-class families. Let's finish the job and connect students to career opportunities starting in high school. Provide access to 2 years of community college, the best career training in America, in addition to being a pathway to a 4-year degree. Let's offer every American a path to a good career, whether they go to college or not. And folks, in the midst of the COVID crisis, when schools were closed and we were shutting down everything, let's recognize how far we came in the fight against the pandemic itself. While the virus is not gone, thanks to the resilience of the American people and the ingenuity of medicine, we've broken the COVID grip on us. COVID deaths are down by 90%. We've saved millions of lives and opened up our country. We opened our country back up.
Just a tip, get vaccinated. Get the COVID vaccine if you don't have it already. Because any side effects from the vaccine are going to be nowhere near as bad as actually having COVID. So, this is a pro-vaccine channel.
And soon we'll end the public health emergency. But that's called a public health emergency.
Yeah, I can watch Sarah Huckabee Sanders' response to this. I have seen that, but I would be down to watch it again because I thought it was a little ridiculous.
But we'll remember the toll and pain that's never going to go away. More than 1 million Americans lost their lives to COVID. 1 million. Families grieving. Children orphaned. Empty chairs at the dining room table constantly reminding you that she used to sit there. Remembering them, we remain vigilant. We still need to monitor dozens of new vaccines and treatments. So Congress needs to fund these efforts and keep America safe. And as we emerge from this crisis stronger, we're also got to double down on prosecuting criminals who stole relief money meant to keep workers and small businesses afloat. Before I came to office, you remember, during that campaign, the big issue was about inspector generals who would protect taxpayers' dollars who were sidelined. They were fired. Many people said we don't need them. And fraud became rampant. Last year, I told you the watchdogs are back. Since then, we've recovered billions of taxpayers' dollars. Now let's triple the anti-fraud strike force going after these criminals, double the statute of limitations on these crimes, and crack down on identity fraud by criminal syndicates stealing billions of dollars from the American people.
Okay.
And the data shows that for every dollar we put into fighting fraud, the taxpayers get back at least 10 times as much. It matters.
Oh, wow.
It matters. Look, COVID left its scars, like the spike in violent crime in 2020. First.
Okay, so the thing with the spike in violent crime, there was a slight spike, but when you compare it to like the long term, it's really not that large of a spike. Yeah. Crime rates from 1980 to 2020. Let's see if I can find something. So here, report in violent crime rate in the United States from 1990 to 2021. So we can see up here, the reported violent crime rate per 100,000 population. So for every 100,000 people, there were, the highest was 758.2 crimes in 1991. Excuse me. So as we can see, it's going down, down. It's spiked a little bit. I guess this only goes to 2020. See if there's a more recent one we can find. Yeah, but so as you can see, the spike from 2020, it actually went down a little bit in 2021 there. So, you know, there was a little spike, but it wasn't like a big spike. Like, it's not as big as people are making it out to seem.
Through the pandemic, we have an obligation to make sure all people are safe. Public safety depends on public trust, as all of us know. But too often that trust is violated. Joining us tonight are the parents of Tyree Nichols. Welcome.
Stories are so sad.
We had to bury Tyree last week.
Oh my God. It just makes me so upset.
As many of you personally know, there's no words to describe the heartache or grief of losing a child. But imagine if you lost that child at the hands of the law. Imagine having to worry whether your son or daughter came home from walking down the street, playing in the park, or just driving a car. Most of us in here have never had to have the talk that brown and black parents have had to have with their children. Bo, Hunter, Ashley, my children, I never had to have the talk with them. I never had to tell them if a police officer pulls you over, turn your interior lights on right away. Don't reach for your license.
Yeah.
Keep your hands on the steering wheel.
Man.
Imagine having to worry like that every single time your kid got in a car. Here's what Tyree's mother shared with me when I spoke to her. When I asked her how she finds the courage to carry on and speak out. The faith of God, she said her son was, quote, a beautiful soul, and something good will come of this. Imagine how much courage and carry that takes. It's up to us, to all of us. We all want the same thing. Neighborhoods free of violence. Law enforcement who earns the community's trust. Just as every cop, when they pin on that badge in the morning, has a right to be able to go home at night, so does everybody else out there. Our children have a right to come home safely.
At least give them McCarthy's
Equal
clapping.
protection under the law is a covenant we have with each other in America.
Yeah.
We know police officers put their lives on the line every single night and day. And we know we ask them in many cases to do too much, to be counselors, social workers, psychologists, responding to drug overdoses, mental
Is he going to say what I hope he's going to say?
health crises, and so much more. In one sense, we ask much too much of them. I know most cops and their families are good, decent, honorable people, the vast majority.
Well, okay. I mean, 40%. Just saying. Yeah, 40% of cops admit to domestically abusing their spouses. So, that's a fun little statistic. But that doesn't mean every single cop is a bad person at heart. But it does mean that every cop does work to uphold a system that is not in favor of the people. And they are asked to do a lot, and that's why we need to, instead of spending more money on the police, we need to be spending more money on these social programs, and we need to be redelegating responsibilities to people in these social programs. Not every situation should require the police, or at least only the police. And they definitely can work together too. Social workers and the police can work together more often in a lot of situations. Or, let's say somebody is just found, like somebody's just using drugs, like, or something, and they're not hurting anybody, they're not breaking any other laws, and, that's a situation where a social worker can step in instead of the police, because, like, the police aren't really necessary for that situation as much as a social worker would be, because a social worker is going to provide them with resources to get help instead of just, throwing them in jail, which does nothing to solve the problem. It can actually make it worse a lot of the times.
They risk their lives every time they put that shield on. But what happened to Tyree in Memphis happens too often. We have to do better. Give law enforcement the real training they need. Hold them to higher standards. Help them succeed in keeping us safe. We also need more first responders and professionals to address the growing mental health, substance abuse challenges. More resources to reduce violent crime and gun crime. More community intervention programs. More investment in housing, education, and job training. All this can help prevent violence in the first place. When police officers or police departments violate the public trust, they must be held accountable.
Yeah.
With the support.
Okay. He's standing up even.
And victims, civil rights groups, and law enforcement, I signed an executive order for all federal officers, banning chokeholds, restricting no-knock warrants, and other key elements of the George Floyd Act. Let's commit ourselves to make the words of Tyler's mom true. Something good must come from this. Something good. And all of us. All of us. Folks, it's difficult, but it's simple. All of us in this chamber, we need to rise to this moment. We can't turn away. Let's do what we know in our hearts that we need to do. Let's come together to finish the job on police reform. Do something. Do something. That was the plea of parents who lost their children in Uvalde. I met with every one of them. Do something about gun violence. Thank God. Thank God we did. Passing the most sweeping gun safety law in 3 decades. That includes things like that the majority of responsible gun owners already support. Enhanced background checks for 18 to 21 years old. Red flag laws, keeping guns out of the hands of people who are a danger to themselves and others.
Yeah.
But we know our work is not done. Joining us tonight is Brandon Say, a 26-year-old hero. Brandon put his college dreams on hold to be at his mom's side. His mom's side when she was dying from cancer. And Brandon...
Okay, so this is something where me and Spencer, we have a slight different opinion, but I'll just give my opinion. Like, I think guns definitely the age restriction should be raised, for sure. You should need to be 21 years or older. I also personally think to buy a gun, you should have to take a gun safety course. Like, something that, teaches you how to properly handle a gun. And you should have some kind of certificate for that. And that should be a requirement. I do think having a firearm is, a right to a certain extent in America, just because of the way the culture is here. Like, think, I mean, and I'm not saying I'm not open to more gun reform, but I guess I'm a little bit kind of on the fence on this, but like, I mean, like, I would personally feel safer if I had a gun. Let's say, like, as a woman walking down the street at night, for example, like, if I used to have to walk home from work at night, in like a not so safe neighborhood, and I'm recovering addict, so I have actually been to jail. I am a felon currently, technically. Well, I'm not. I am, but I'm not. Like, I've had a felony, and I'm not, I wasn't allowed to own a gun. And I still think I'm not allowed to own a gun yet, but I didn't do anything violent, all I did was I had a possession, but that's in my past. But anyways, so I just feel like I'm uncomfortable when it's only, the right, like, the alt-righters, the right wing, not just the alt-right, but Republicans, right-wingers, whatever you want to call them, conservatives in general. I don't like them being the only ones who have a gun. Because, especially after something like January 6th, or, situations where people are going into, like, drag shows and shooting the place up. Like, going into gay bars, shooting the place up. Like, committing hate crimes against people, and I just think that if someone has the proper training and actually, knows that, like, can use the gun efficiently, they should be able to pass some kind of, like, test or course or whatever to show that they can handle their weapon efficiently as well to get the gun. But I think that, like, there are certain situations where it can help protect you. And I mean, if you're in a shooting and you don't know who's shooting, then don't shoot, because you could hurt somebody that's innocent. But if you know who's shooting, or let's say you're in a different type of situation where you're in danger, like if someone attacks you or something like that, or someone, it can be used for self-defense. And I think, like, non-violent felons should still have the right to have guns. Like, in an ideal, here's basic my thing. In an ideal society, we wouldn't have guns and we wouldn't need guns. But the thing is, guns are already out there, and you can try to collect all the guns you want, but there are going to be people who still have guns. And, people who are still able to manufacture them or get them from places where they are legal and bring them into the U.S. So, and it would be harder to get guns, but, like, people would still have their ways, for sure. I guess I'm just skeptical because of the whole prohibition aspect of it. Now, it would be a more successful prohibition than, let's say, drug prohibition, because, it's a lot easier to make drugs than it is to make a gun. But regardless, I don't know. I just feel like I would feel safer with one. So I guess I have my own personal bias there. I'll admit to that. But that's just the way I see it.
Brandon now works at the dance studio started by his grandparents. And 2 weeks ago, during the Lunar New Year celebrations.
Did Australia get rid of all guns? Probably. Yeah. So, oh my god. Okay, continue. Okay. Just want to get to the information. They confiscated and destroyed 700,000 firearms. So they reduced the number of gun-owning households by half. So it looks like they didn't get rid of all guns, but they got rid of a lot of guns. And gun homicides decreased by 60%. Yeah, because a lot of the data does show. So, okay, in my opinion, I just think that it has to do with America's culture around guns. Because, like, if you try to take guns away from people, honestly, and this is just what I think, like, some of these people who are really passionate about owning their guns and the Second Amendment and all that, if you try to take their guns away, like, they would probably just, like, shoot you straight up. Or in a video game, you know? Like, they would try to attack, basically. I mean, there's still ways to import stuff into the country besides through land. That might help the situation a little bit, but there will still be ways to import guns and sneak them through, like, seaports or through airports or, you know, things like that. But yeah, I'm sure it helps a little bit. It might help a little bit that they're not, like, that they're surrounded by water. But I mean, I think that would be a smaller factor, if anything. But yeah, I just think because America's culture is very, like, a lot of it is centered around guns and the Second Amendment. Like, I think that would cause people to try to attack other people. I think and maybe we can get to that point one day and we can slowly build up our gun reform, and I think we could eventually get to a place where we don't need guns, like, and that we don't have them anymore. But it would be a very slow process if we were to take that direction. I don't think Australia does have a right to arms. Yeah, a lot of countries don't have a right to arms. I think that's a pretty American thing.
You heard the studio door close. You saw a man standing there pointing a semi-automatic pistol at him. He thought he was going to die, but he thought about the people inside. And in that instant, he found the courage to act and wrestled a semi-automatic pistol away from the gunman who had already killed 11 people in another dance studio. 11. He saved lives. It's time we do the same. Ban assault weapons now. Ban them now. Once and for all.
Yeah, I don't think we need assault weapons. I mean, I don't know if that's even a technical term for guns, though, because I don't know a lot about guns personally. But, yeah. I would say, like, definitely keeping, like, silencer bans and, like, you know, we do have some restrictions on guns currently. And even in the Second Amendment, I'll pull up the exact quote. They said something like, Second Amendment. I'm just going to look it up. Yeah, it says a well-regulated militia. So the Second Amendment doesn't even guarantee you the right to any arms that you want. Like, it still does have to be regulated. And also, when they wrote the Second Amendment, like, I don't think they imagined the kind of weapons we have today either. Like, you know, back in the day, it was like a musket, you know? Like, you gotta shoot one shot, and then you gotta spend 5 minutes loading the next one. Like, it's not like you can just kill a bunch of people in, like, 3 minutes. who's in charge of regulating it? Honestly, from what I've seen, like, it's mostly Congress who really does that. So, like, the House and the Senate. And the problem is the split we have. So, like, the House right now, the Senate is Democratic, but the House is Republican. So the House isn't going to vote for a bill that restricts gun laws most of the time. I don't know if that's technically in the Constitution that Congress is in charge of the militia. I don't think it states who is in charge. But I guess I'm not, well, maybe I'm not sure, but like, as in practicality, like the way the system currently is, like most of the laws like that are passed through Congress. I mean, I guess someone could always, like, so if somebody tried to, like, sue the state for taking their guns or something, and then, you know, that court case didn't get passed, they could take that eventually to the Supreme Court. And then at that point, the Supreme Court would be in charge of that regulation. And then, I mean, there are ways, like, there might be ways that the president can enact some kind of gun regulation, but, like, I think that would be kind of tricky from that position, for that specific issue. Yeah, I would say the Supreme Court is the final, like, yeah, I would say to a certain degree, it's the final law. Really, the only thing that controls the Supreme Court is when a seat is empty and a president fills it. And pretty much from there, that's the only really checks and balance we have for a Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court has a lot of power. And right now, it is not looking good. But at the same time, there are things like, for example, the Same-Sex Marriage Act that Joe Biden was talking about that he passed, that I think that can stop the Supreme Court from saying that, like, you know, we no longer see gay marriage as a right, a human right. I mean, they kind of are taking over the country to a certain extent. Like, so they pretty much say, like, so for example, with Roe v. Wade, like, they didn't outright ban abortion nationally because they don't have the power to do that. But they do have the power to say, okay, this isn't up for us to decide. This is up for the state to decide. And so the state decides if abortion is a human right or not. So, like, that's why now there are so many states that are banning abortion. Yeah, but, I mean, they kind of are taking over the country to a certain extent. It is a little worrying that it's a 6-3 split. So they let states decide abortion rights more because of the way the law is written for Roe v. Wade. Because the way the law was written for Roe v. Wade was that, like, okay, they basically rule what's constitutional and what's unconstitutional. So they don't actually make any laws, but, like, they can, their job is to, like, say what can and cannot be restricted based on the Constitution. That's ultimately what it comes down to. So it's basically just because of their personal opinions. Yeah, abortion, they decided that abortion is no longer a constitutional right, basically. They overstepped the precedent that was already set that it was a constitutional right, but yeah, it's no longer a constitutional right to be able to get an abortion. It's not that abortion itself is unconstitutional, though, because they're leaving it up to the states to decide on that issue, because it's not a constitutional right.
I led the fight to do that in 1994. In 10 years, that ban was law, mass shootings went down. After we let it expire in the Republican administration, mass shootings tripled. Let's finish the job and ban these assault weapons. And let's also come together on immigration. Make it a bipartisan issue once again. We now have a record number of personnel working to secure the border, arresting 8,000 human smugglers, seizing over 23,000 pounds of fentanyl in just the last several months. We've launched a new border plan last month. Unlawful migration from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela has come down 97% as a consequence of that. But American border problems won't be fixed until Congress acts. If we don't pass my comprehensive immigration reform, at least pass my plan to provide the equipment and officers to secure the border. And a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, those on temporary status, farm workers, essential workers. Here in the people's house, it's our duty to protect all the people's rights and freedoms.
Here's my thing. If you're paying taxes to the U.S. government, you deserve, and you've lived here, for a few years, you deserve a pathway to citizenship. And that's, you're contributing to the economy, Yeah, no, immigrants are taking the jobs that people don't want to do anyways. And immigrants are, often exploited because, especially when, they're undocumented. But, even if they're not, sometimes, they're exploited getting very little pay, under the table. So, less than a minimum wage, doing really grueling jobs sometimes. I think how much, because I think this is a big one, how much of the jobs. So 73%, immigrant farm workers make up 73% of agriculture workers in the United States. So just for an example, they're not taking the jobs that people are trying to do. Yeah, no, the people who sneak in drugs in the country, I can tell you this just firsthand, it's not the Mexicans, it's the white people. It's white people bringing drugs in the country for the most part. At least, it, that's just not how it works, that would, because, who's more likely to be stopped at the border crossing? Just think about it from the point of view that you're trying to get past the border security. You want to have the least suspicious person possible. Yeah, the media tells me they're harassing the southern border to hurt all Americans. Yeah. No, I mean... Yeah, immigrants actually really help the economy. They really help Americans. They help, almost all Americans, really. To have, pay increases, for example. Oh, the media loves to push lies and propaganda. I'm not saying all of the news is lies and propaganda. There's some legit stuff out there, but, it's not so much that what they're saying is a complete lie. It's more of a, misrepresentation of the truth. So, there will be that nugget of truth in there. There will be the true part of the story. And then there will be their journalistic spin on it. So, yeah, it also depends on what news network you're talking about. Are we talking about, are we talking about Fox News or are we talking about Reuters? There's a huge difference. I try my best not to lie, and if something I represent is inaccurate and I figure it out, then I will take accountability for that, and I'll come back and I'll say, look, I was wrong about this, and this is what I actually found out later to be true. I'll own up to it if I say something that's inaccurate. Like, I'm not, I'm not intentionally pushing anything misleading or, that's not true. Yeah, I would say you could trust our reporting, but I wouldn't blindly trust anybody, really. I try my best to be honest, but it's always good to look at the information for yourself, no matter who you're watching. Now, even if it's someone who is doing their best to be honest and truthful. Because sometimes, everybody in America is fed propaganda. So, if there's some misinformation out there, anybody can be susceptible to misinformation. And it's our responsibility to do our best to try to figure out what is and isn't. But, we might not be perfect 100% of the time. But it's important to take accountability when you report factually incorrect information. How do we do that? It's a complicated answer, to be honest. It's just kind of looking at who's a reliable source, who's not. How is this information being presented to me, and why is this information being presented to me in this way? I think those are two really important questions to ask when you are dealing with the media or any kind of reporting, or, when you're looking up information. What's their angle? What's their intention of presenting me this information? Things like that. The thing with AI is that it's human controlled. So, the AI might, it might eventually be able to report propaganda, but it all depends on, what you're putting into the machine, what code you're putting into the machine, and, who's designing the machine. Because whoever's designing the algorithm might have certain biases. So, for example, there was a whole, thing with when, face detection technology first came out. It was a lot easier for the machine to identify white faces than it was black faces. And, who was designing this product is the question we need to ask in that situation, and what biases might they have. So that's why it's also important when we're especially developing AI, really on any team though, but especially on an AI team for sure. Having diversity really helps with AI, with making AI more accurate. Just because diverse people are going to have diverse perspectives, and that is going to influence how the AI is programmed. I don't think AI is to that point yet where it's 100% accurate, even when it's pulling information from the internet, because I don't think the algorithm can detect misinformation all the time. Oops. Oh shit, I'm sorry. I dropped my phone. But I think we could get to the point one day. There are already AI programs that can write news reports, and some of them are better than others, but they will get to the point, I think, where they can provide reliable news. But it also depends on what you're feeding into it too, what's it called, what you're typing in for it to make you, I guess, for lack of better terms.
Congress must restore the right and the...
What?
Congress must restore the right that was taken away in Roe v. Wade and protect Roe v. Wade. Give every woman a consular right. The Vice President and I are doing everything to protect access to reproductive health care and safeguard patient safety. But already more than a dozen states are enforcing extreme abortion bans. Make no mistake about it. If Congress passes a national ban, I will veto it. But let's also pass the Bipartisan Equality Act to ensure LGBTQ Americans, especially transgender
Oh,
young
let's see you
people,
clap for this.
can live with safety and dignity. Our strength.
Yeah.
Our strength is not just the example of our power, but the power of our example. Let's remember the world's watching. I spoke in this chamber 1 year ago, just days after Vladimir Putin unleashed his brutal attack against Ukraine. A murderous assault, evoking images of death and destruction Europe suffered in World War II. Putin's invasion has been a test for the ages, a test for America, a test for the world. Would we stand for the most basic of principles? Would we stand for sovereignty? Would we stand for the right of people to live free of tyranny? Would we stand for the defense of democracy? For such defense matters to us because it keeps peace and prevents open season on would-be aggressors and threatens our
I'll be right back. I'm just going to grab my drink really quick.
1 year later, we know the answer. Yes, we would, and we did. We did. And together, we did what America always does at our best. We led. We united NATO. We built a global coalition. We stood against Putin's aggression. We stood with the Ukrainian people. Tonight, we're once again joined by Ukraine's ambassador to the United States. She represents not just her nation, but the courage of her people. Our ambassador is here, we're united in our support of your country. Will you stand so we can all take a look at you? Thank you.
Okay. Let's see.
Because we're going to stand with you as long as it takes. Our nation is working for more freedom, more dignity, more peace, not just in Europe, but everywhere. Before I came to office, the story was about how the People's Republic of China was increasing its power and America was failing in the world. Not anymore. We made clear, and I made clear in my personal conversations, which have been many, with President Xi, that we seek competition, not conflict. But I will make no apologies that we're investing to make America stronger. Investing in American innovation and industries that will define the future that China intends to be dominating. Investing in our alliances and working with our allies to protect advanced technologies so they will not be used against us. Modernizing our military to safeguard stability and deter aggression. Today, we're in the strongest position in decades to compete with China or anyone else in the world. Anyone else in the world. And I'm committed. I'm committed to work with China where we can advance American interests and benefit the world. But make no mistake about it. As we made clear last week, if China threatens our sovereignty, we will act to protect our country, and we did.
We got that balloon.
Look, let's be clear. Winning the competition should unite all of us. We face serious challenges across the world. But in the past 2 years, democracies have become stronger, not weaker. Autocracy has grown weaker, not stronger. Name me a world leader who changed places with Xi Jinping. Name me one. Name me one. America's rallying the world to meet those challenges, from climate to global health, to food insecurity, to terrorism, to territorial aggression. Allies are stepping up, spending more and doing more. Look, the bridges we're forming between partners in the Pacific and those in the Atlantic, and those who bet against America are learning.
Yeah, so there was that Chinese spy balloon that was flying across the country, and we shot it down, and China tried to say that it was just a weather balloon and it was not a spy balloon, but I guess it was confirmed that it was a spy balloon once they shot it down and looked at the technology. So yeah, China was just trying to hide that they were trying to surveil us with a big balloon. So, I mean, but they had to have known that someone would see it. So, like, you know, it makes you wonder, like, if they're just, you know, trying to, like, send a little message or something to the government, you know, to the United States. And I think, I'm going to look this up because I don't want to report anything that's not. Does the U.S. have spy balloons? Because I thought I heard they did, but I don't. Okay, yeah, everything I'm saying is about the Chinese spy balloons, so maybe not, but, so I won't say that we do for sure. But yeah, so that's the whole thing with the balloon.
How wrong they are. It's never, ever been a good bet to bet against America. Never.
Oh, they're chanting.
Office, most assured that bipartisanship assumed was impossible, but never believed it. That's why a year ago I offered a unity agenda to the nation as I stood here. We made real progress together. We passed a law making it easy for doctors to prescribe effective treatments for opioid addiction. We passed the gun safety law, making historic investments in mental health. We launched the ARPA-H drive for breakthrough in the fights against cancer, Alzheimer's, and diabetes, and so much more. We passed the Heath Robinson PACT Act, named after the late Iraq War veteran whose story about exposure to toxic burn kits I shared here last year. I understand something about those burn pits, but there's so much more to do. We can do it together. Joining us tonight is a father named Doug from Newton, New Hampshire. He wrote Jill, my wife, a letter, and me as well, about his courageous daughter, Courtney. A contagious laugh, his sister's best friend, her sister's best friend. He shared a story all too familiar to millions of Americans and many of you in the audience. Courtney discovered pills in high school. It spiraled into addiction and eventually death from a fentanyl overdose. She was just 20 years old. Describing the last 8 years without her, Doug said, "There's no worse pain." Yet their family has turned pain to purpose, working to end the stigma and change laws. He told us he wants to start a journey toward American recovery.
Okay.
Doug, we're with you.
What are you going to do, Joe?
Fentanyl is killing more than 70,000 Americans a year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's even more than that, I think. I think it was like 100,000 or something like that, but... Oh, no, yeah. No, he's right. Because he just said fentanyl, not opiate. Or not drug overdoses. Yeah, no, I think that's right for the fentanyl number, actually.
You got it.
Oh, someone just said it's his fault. Yeah. Because it's not like the opioid epidemic was happening before he was president or anything. Yeah, no. I don't see how it's Joe Biden's fault. At all.
So let's launch a major surge to stop fentanyl production and the sale and trafficking with more drug detection machines, inspection cargo, stop pills and powder at the...
See, okay, that's not the right way to go. Because they're just gonna, you know, gain one more step ahead of all those measures. I mean, they already do that in a lot of instances. Like, there's a lot of ways to sneak drugs into and around the country. And in my opinion, you know, a lot of people say this sounds crazy because, you know, it seems counterintuitive, but, you know, legalizing and heavily regulating sale of drugs, the same way we do with alcohol. Maybe a little more strict, but, have somebody who can educate you when you're purchasing said drugs, and making, mental health resources, rehabilitation more accessible for people. Because right now, in a lot of places, rehab is not very accessible. And the rehab that is accessible is not very well regulated either, and that needs to be better regulated as well. Especially, and that varies by state as well, but, just overall in general, we need actually science-based, not even just science, but research-based treatment, to be the center of a program, not. And if, you want to do something like the 12 steps, that's fine. You can certainly do that as well, but you need to also have things like cognitive behavioral therapy involved. And that, it's not about trying to arrest more people and put more people in jail because of drugs, because that's not going to help the problem. People aren't getting rehabilitated in jails, and really not very much in prisons either. The programs they have aren't usually great. But it's too bad the prison systems are privatized, so they don't care. They want people to come back. They want a high recidivism rate, because that makes them more money off of everything that, between the exploited labor of prisoners, and also just all the charges that come with being in jail or prison. Whether that's soap to wash your soap, or, maybe you want some kind of snack that's not just jail food, something that you actually enjoy eating. Or, sometimes even Advil, things like that you have to buy, or, paying for emails and phone calls. They make a lot of money, let's just say, off of prisoners, so they're not looking to rehabilitate them anytime soon. So, okay, the prison system, and we have an episode about this as well a little bit, but basically, so the police force actually started as a way to catch runaway slaves. That's what the original police force in the United States was for. And the entire structure of it is built on top of that. So it's basically designed around specifically locking up minorities especially. And, being able to, yes, has been designed basically because the prison system has been designed as a way in the United States mostly to further oppress the lives of minorities. And that's just kind of how the system in America has been in general too. And we've been progressing and getting better, but, for example, slavery, if you look at I think the 13th Amendment, if I'm remembering that right, basically the clause that says that ends slavery in the Constitution, the amendment. There's an exception that says that you can use prisoners as slaves as a form of legal punishment. So yeah, it was designed to be that way. It was not initially meant to be helpful. That's not what the police force is about. It's also about protecting capital as well for people, and protecting private property rather than actually protecting the people from danger. And I mean, it's evolved a little bit more and it's supposed to be that way. And an ideal police force would be to help the people and not to just, lock people up and, create a system of slavery and degradation. But yeah, no, the prison system is awful. It's not designed to actually help anything. It's just designed as punishment.
working with couriers like FedEx to inspect more packages for drugs. Strong penalties to crack down on fentanyl trafficking. Second, let's do more on mental health, especially for our children. When millions of young people are struggling with bullying, violence, trauma, we owe them greater access to mental health care at their schools. We must finally hold social media companies accountable for experimenting they're doing running children for profit. It's time to pass bipartisan legislation to stop big tech from collecting personal data on our kids and teenagers online. Ban targeted advertising to children and impose strict...
I don't know why no one else is joining the live, honestly. I wish I did so I could fix it. It would be nice to have a few more viewers. Maybe I upset Twitch, I don't know. Maybe they don't like my opinions, but I mean, I'm not going to lie about, what I think. I just don't see the point. But yeah, it's probably just the way the algorithm works. The more viewers you have, the more viewers you're going to get, unfortunately.
Stricter limits on the personal data that companies collect on all of us.
No, I'm not going to push Twitch's agenda. I'm just using the platform to express myself, I guess. And I really don't care to push anyone else's agenda, honestly. That's just... I'm not trying to push anything I don't believe in. That just goes against my values as a person.
Third, let's do more to keep this nation's one truly sacred obligation to equip those we send into harm's way and care for them and their families when they come home. Job training, job placement for veterans and their spouses as they come to return to civilian life. Helping veterans afford the rent, because no one should be homeless in America, especially someone who served the country. Dennis McDonough is here at the VA. We had our first real discussion when I asked him to take the job. I'm glad he did. We were losing up to 25 veterans a day on suicide. Now we're losing 17 a day to the silent scourge of suicide. 17 veterans a day.
That's better, but that's still not great.
Are committing suicide. More than all the people being killed in the wars. Folks, VA is doing everything it can, including expanding mental health screening, proven programs that recruits veterans to help other veterans understand what they're going through, get them the help they need. We got to do more. And fourth, last year, Jill and I reignited the cancer moonshot that I was able to start with President Obama asked me to lead our administration on this issue. Our goal is to cut the cancer death rates at least by 50% in the next 25 years. Turn more cancers from death sentences to treatable diseases. Provide more support for patients and their families. It's personal to so many of us in this audience. Joining us are Morris and Candice, an Irishman and a daughter of immigrants from Panama. They met and fell in love in New York City and got married in the same chapel Jill and I got married in New York City. Kindred spirits. He wrote us a letter about his little daughter Ava, and I saw her just before I came over. She was just a year old when she was diagnosed with rare kidney disease, cancer.
Oh, no.
After 26 blood transfusions, 11 rounds of radiation, 8 rounds of chemo, 1 kidney removed.
Oh my God.
Given a 5% survival rate. He wrote how in the darkest moments he thought, if she goes, I can't stay. Many of you have been through that as well. Jill and I understand that like so many of you. And he read Jill's book describing our family's cancer journey and how we tried to steal moments of joy where we could with Bo. For them, that glimmer of joy was the half smile of their baby girl. It meant everything to them. They never gave up hope. Little Ava never gave up hope. She turns 4 next month. They just
Oh,
found
she
out
did. Good.
Ava's beating the odds, is on her way to being cured of cancer. And
Okay.
she's watching from the White House tonight if she's not asleep already. For the lives we can save. For the lives we can save and the lives we've lost, let this be a truly American moment that rallies the country and the world together and proves that we can still do big things. 20 years ago, under the leadership of President Bush and countless advocates and champions, he undertook a bipartisan effort through PEPFAR to transform the global fight against HIV/AIDS. It's been a huge success. He thought big, he thought large, he moved. I believe we can do the same thing with cancer. Let's end cancer as we know it. Cure some cancers once and for all. Folks, there's one reason why we've been able to do all of these things. Our democracy itself. It's the most fundamental thing of all. With democracy, everything's possible. Without it, nothing is. For the last few years, our democracy has been threatened and attacked, put at risk, put to the test in this very room on January the 6th.
Yeah.
And then just a few months ago, an unhinged big lie assailed and unleashed a political violence, the home of the then Speaker of the House of Representatives,
Yeah.
using the very same language the insurrectionists used as they stalked these halls and chanted on January 6th. Here tonight in this chamber is a man who bears the scars of that brutal attack, but is as tough and as strong and as resilient as they get. My friend Paul Pelosi. Paul, stand up.
Yeah. That was crazy.
But such a heinous act should have never happened. We must all speak out. There's no place for political violence in America. We have to protect the right to vote, not suppress that fundamental right. Honor the results of our elections, not subvert the will of the people. We have to uphold the rule of law and restore trust in our institutions of democracy. We must give hate and extremism in any form no safe harbor. Democracy must not be a...
No, he was not attacked by a leper. No, there's absolutely no evidence of that. It was a political attack. Yeah. Oh no, not Fox News. Let's take a look. Just for fun, let's take a look at this article real quick. Mentally ill suspect lived with jailed nudist lover. Okay, whatever. This lover constantly paranoid. Let's see what kind of evidence they think they have.
Was even born.
Oh my
Doctors
god.
discovered
No. Okay. Elder abuse is a charge? Okay. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I know. Yeah, he demanded to talk to Nancy during the attack, so I feel like that's one signal. No, he this. What's his name? Let me look this up here. His name is Dave DePepe. Okay. Here, we can look it up right now. let's see what they got to say here. So let's see. Where's a good source? I'll go with LA Times. I think they'll be okay. When Pepe began talking about politics, his outlook grew darker. It was right wing all the way down the line, Cicerelli said. He thought climate change was a hoax and Hillary Clinton is running a pedophile ring outside of a pizza parlor. It was so ridiculous that it was hard to take seriously. So, and who is that said that? Oh, that was a carpenter who employed the Pepe in the Bay Area. So that was his employer, I guess. Someone who employed him. Who said that. He's talking about right-wing politics all the time. So let's see. They paint a portrait of a man who began to deteriorate over the last year and a half, and he spent a great deal of time alone, absorbing extremist views online and shifting his political views from supporting former President Obama years ago to believing in the false Pizzagate conspiracy theory. His quiet, gentle exterior hid an obsession with conspiracies, says Bruns, who believed that Pepe also had a history of mental illness, drug abuse, and possibly childhood trauma. Makes sense. So yeah, this was a right-wing attacker who was completely down the alt-right pipeline. So yeah, I really doubt that. They were not gay lovers. That's just not true at all.
A partisan issue. It's an American issue. Every generation of Americans has faced a moment where they have been called to protect our democracy, defend it, stand up for it. And this is our moment. My fellow Americans, we meet tonight at an inflection point. One of those moments that only a few generations ever face, where the direction we now take is going to decide the course of this nation for decades to come. We're not bystanders of history. We're not powerless before the forces that confront us. It's within our power of we, the people. We're facing the test of our time. We have to be the nation we've always been at our best. Optimistic, hopeful, forward-looking. A nation that embraces light over dark, hope over fear, unity over division, stability over chaos. We have to see each other not as enemies, but as fellow Americans. We're good people. The only nation in the world built on an idea. The only one.
Okay.
Other nations are defined by geography, ethnicity. But we're the only nation based on an idea. That all of us, every one of us, is created equal in the image of God.
Well, okay. The country was not founded on that idea at all. It was founded on an idea that would apply to white property owners, and white was a very definition back then than it is today. It is a lot stricter of a definition than it is today. So, not saying that we can't reach equality, because that's the goal, right? But to say that we're built on that is a little disingenuous.
A nation that stands as a beacon of the world. A nation in a new age of possibilities. So I've come to fulfill my constitutional obligation to report in the State of the Union. And here's my report. Because the soul of this nation is strong, because the backbone of this nation is strong, because the people of this nation are strong, the State of the Union is strong. I'm not new to this place. I stand here tonight having served as long as about any one of you have ever served here. But I've never been more optimistic about our future, about the future of America. We just have to remember who we are. We're the United States of America, and there's nothing beyond our capacity if we do it together. God bless you all, and may God protect our truth. Thanks.
All right. So that was the State of the Union. Now let's look up the response. All right, this one's a quick one. So, yeah, this is, she's now the Arkansas governor. She was formerly, what was her position? What's it called? She was basically like the mouthpiece for Trump. And she is delivering the response to the State of the Union now. So let's see.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Being a mom to 3 young children taught me not to believe every story I hear. So forgive me for not believing much of anything I heard tonight from President Biden. From out of control inflation and violent crime to the dangerous border crisis and threat from China.
All right.
Biden and the
Whoa, let's settle down there. It was...
to the dangerous border.
Yeah, we talked about the violent crime rate already. We saw that inflation has been going down. And this dangerous border crisis is not as dangerous as people are making it out to be. Now, it would be ideal if people could just come into this country legally every time. But a lot of the people crossing the border are legally crossing to seek asylum. That's a large portion of it, at least.
Border crisis and threat from China. Biden and the Democrats have failed you. They know it, and you know it. And it's time for a change. Tonight, let us reaffirm our commitment to a timeless American idea that government exists not to rule the people, but to serve the people.
Interesting. I wonder if her policies reflect that or not.
Democrats want to rule us with more government control, but that's not who we are. America is the...
She's not anti-government, actually. She's making it sound like she's anti-government, but we'll see in a minute here what kind of laws she's putting into place that are the opposite of anti-government and that actually enact more government control.
The greatest country the world has ever known, because we're the freest country the world has ever known.
Okay, I mean, by what metric are we the freest country that the world has ever known? Because we have the highest prison population in the world by a long shot. So, just saying.
With a people who are strong and...
Republicans are for freedom for themselves. Republicans are not for the freedoms of other people, though. They are, like, for example, they're not for the freedom of women having the right to choose. They're not for the freedom of people allowing to be trans, allowing people to be trans, just existing as a trans person and living, doing what's medically best for them. She is saying that freedom is what she stands for. That is what she's saying. However, it is a rather hypocritical statement from her.
Resilient. 5 months ago, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. It was a hard time for our family, particularly our kids, Scarlett, Huck, and George. But we kept our faith and persevered. Thanks to exceptional doctors here in Arkansas, a successful surgery, and the grace of God.
And also having good insurance.
I am cancer-free.
But I'm glad she's cancer-free, obviously. I'm glad she was able to get the treatment. As much as I don't like her, I am glad that she is able to heal and recover. That's great for her.
Through it all, I couldn't help but think about my mom. She was 20 years old and in her first year of marriage when she was diagnosed with spinal cancer. The doctors told her she might not live, and if she did live, they said she'd never walk again. And if she did walk, she'd definitely never have children. The daughter she was told she'd never have was just sworn in as the new governor of Arkansas and is speaking to you tonight. Adversity and fear of the unknown can paralyze us, but faith propels us to charge boldly ahead. We can't stand still in the face of great challenges. You and I were put on this earth for such a time as this, to charge boldly ahead. I'll be the first to admit, President Biden and I don't have a lot in common. I'm for freedom, he's for government control.
I mean, technically you're both in government, so you're both looking for different forms of government control. But, okay. I would just say I would agree with Biden's form a little bit more than yours. Not on everything he's done, but, you know, definitely some of the stuff he said in the State of the Union, for sure. You know, I'm not sure if there's always a response. I think there is, but I never saw any responses to Trump's State of the Union, but I mean, I'm sure they're out there. I would imagine. So I think this is a regular thing that they do.
At 40.
Actually, let me look that up because I don't want to say the wrong thing here. Response to State of Union address. So the practice began in 1966 when Republican U.S. Senator Everett Dirksen from Illinois and U.S. Representative Gerald Ford from Michigan appeared on TV to offer a response to the address by the Democratic President Lyndon Johnson. So I guess this is a practice that started in 1966. And it sounds like it's usually the opposite party that responds.
I'm the youngest governor in the country, and at 80, he's the oldest president in American history.
Okay.
I'm the first woman to lead my state, and he's the first man to surrender his presidency to a woke mob that can't even tell you what a woman is.
Oh boy, wow, where to begin? I can tell you what a woman is. A woman is a person who identifies as a woman. That's what a woman is. Now, if we're talking about sex, biological sex, that's a different story, but no one is denying that biological sex they're born as. They're simply... So, okay, it's a little more complicated than the chromosomal makeup. There's a lot that goes into the trends of biological males and females, but there's also a lot of variance within that. Not every single man is going to have the same biological makeup, even by standards of sex. We don't really need a name for chromosomes, I don't think. So basically, a woman is a form of gender expression. Now, while sex is biological and is concrete, gender is a societal construct. For example, there's no biological reason that a woman needs to wear a dress, or that a woman needs to wear high heels, or that a man needs to wear a suit. Like, there's just no biological basis behind that. That is a societal construct of gender. So, there's also intersex people as well. And And you might say someone with XX chromosomes is typically a female, as in the sex, but a woman is a different concept. A woman is a gender expression that is centered around societal constructs that, you know, are loosely based off of general trends of sex. But they're not always correlated. They're often correlated, but not all of the time.
In the radical left's America, Washington taxes you and like...
Exactly. Female is, well, not sexuality, like as in sexual orientation, but yeah, female is the sex, and then the woman is a gender identity. Yeah, so they're two separate things that can often correlate, but not always.
Your hard-earned money on fire, but you get crushed with high gas prices, empty grocery shelves, and our children are taught to hate.
I mean, pointing out someone's biological gender when it doesn't align with, their biological sex, calling someone by their biological sex when it doesn't align with the typical societal role of gender, I would say that, pointing that out, unless you're like their doctor, pretty much, like unless it's for a medical reason, like there's not really a reason to point, like just to point that out for no reason. Now, you can say that their biological sex is female, and they're not going to deny that. But if you try to say it in terms of equivocating it with gender, is the point where I think they would get upset if you were to do that way.
One another on account of their race, but not to love one another or our great country. Whether Joe Biden believes this madness...
It's not that the facts upset them. It's what upsets them is when their gender identity is not respected. So, I just don't see the need to point out, biological sex when it doesn't align with gender. Or even when it does, it's not... the facts themselves aren't what upset them, though. It's more of the disrespect that surrounds the presentation of the facts. If that makes sense. Because if they're at the doctor's office, disrespecting God. Well, I don't even personally believe in God. But if there is a God, I don't think God would really care about something so trivial. I think a God would be more worried about more pressing issues in the world. And plus, God would have designed them to be trans. God would have given them, the mind of a trans person. And would have... I see it more as disrespecting God if you weren't to identify with the gender that you're truly comfortable with. But yeah, again, gender is a societal construct, so I don't think that would be something where, a God would care. I wouldn't think.
Or is simply too weak to resist it. His administration has been completely hijacked by the radical left. The dividing line in America is no longer between right or left.
They cannot just exist because people are trying to take away their existence. They're not trying to shove anything down your throat. They're just asking for basic respect. They're just asking to be called by the pronouns they want to be called. They're being asked to be allowed to medically transition when it's, medically beneficial for them. And deciding that between, professional therapists and, like gender specialists, like actually practicing professionals who specifically specialize in, whether or not being trans is, the right decision for somebody, and helping them along with that journey, whether they do make changes or they don't. No one is trying to shove anything down your throat, though, just by existing. I mean, all they're asking, like, okay, we call formerly known as Kanye West, he's now Ye. We call him Ye now because he asked us to call him Ye. So I don't see why pronouns are so much different from a situation like that. Or with Prince, the artist formerly known as Prince, he was represented by a symbol, and we all went along with that. It's kind of the same concept, like, or even just having a nickname. Like, my nickname is Katie. Katie's not my legal name, but I go by Katie, and that's what I ask people to call me, and they call me that, not my legal name, so it's pretty much the same concept.
The choice is between normal or crazy. It's time for a new generation of Republican leadership. Upon taking office just a few weeks ago, I signed executive orders to ban CRT, racism, and indoctrination in our schools.
Not CRT. No one's going to force you to be trans. Don't worry. Yeah, no. Yeah, especially if you're respectful. That's all they want. Respect.
Schools. Eliminate the use.
Oh, and this lady's talking about here. Banning CRT, which is a meaningless phrase at this point. Could mean anything from, just not talking about CRT is not the anti-white education. CRT is basically just the new buzzword to mean that, like, anything that talks about race in schools. So, like, telling people that, like, for example, teaching about white privilege, which is a thing that exists. And white privilege doesn't make you a bad person. That's the thing that people, Republican conservatives don't realize, is having privilege doesn't make you a bad person unless you're abusing that privilege. But if you're not abusing that privilege, then, you can use your privilege even to help people sometimes. Like, me being a white person in a car with, like a black person, and we get pulled over by the police, using my white privilege to make the cop feel more comfortable and, not shoot anybody in a video game. That's just an example. But, white privilege doesn't make you a bad person, though. CRT is basically, actual CRT is about, like, the social constructs of race and how they interact with day-to-day life, pretty much. But that's like a college level course. Like, that's a college level subject. They're not teaching actual CRT in any kind of public education, like anything under 12th grade or under, or not even in 12th grade either.
Use of derogatory term Latinx in our government, repealed COVID orders, and said never again to authoritarian mandates and shutdowns.
Wow, well, hopefully there's not another pandemic then.
Americans want common sense from their leaders. But in Washington, the Biden administration is doubling down on crazy. President Biden inherited the fastest economic recovery on record, the most secure border in history, cheap, abundant, homegrown energy, fast rising wages, a rebuilt military, and a world that was stable and at peace. But over the last 2 years, Democrats destroyed it all.
Wait,
Despite
what?
Democrats' trillions in reckless spending and mountains of debt, we now
Wait, but Biden is the one who lowered the deficit, and Trump is the one who raised the deficit, so.
have the worst border crisis in American history. As a mom,
Yeah, pretty much she's trying to say you should be scared of fascist Democrats, even though I don't think Democrats are, at least, I mean, they're not really the fascist ones here. Democrats aren't perfect, don't get me wrong. There's definitely, I mean, they still support capitalism, but, and the capitalist infrastructure, but they're not fascist, though. But yeah, that is what she's trying to say. I mean, the thing is, we can still like each other, like, as people. I mean, depending on what the beliefs are, obviously. Like, for example, as a bisexual person, I'm not going to be friends with somebody who, doesn't believe that, LGBT people should have rights. I'm just not going to be friends with somebody like that because that goes against my interests. But if somebody's just a Republican, but they're still willing to respect me, that's all I ask for. And we can get along, and we're cool with that. But if they're going to be disrespectful, then I'm not going to like them. But yeah, the country is Republicans versus Democrats. Unfortunately, I don't like the fact that it's a two-party system. I wish we had more parties involved with more representation of different views that people have, so that we don't have to stick ourselves into these boxes that we don't really fit into, politically speaking. Can we fix it? Yeah, one thing we talked about in an episode about voting, actually, that would help fix this issue, I think. The first step would be to do ranked choice voting, which, if you don't know, ranked choice voting, instead of just voting for one candidate, you rank each of the candidates based on, like, what position, you rank them based on how much you like them, basically. I mean, I don't think fighting is the only way we have to go down, but it does seem to be the road that we are going down, unfortunately. I think in an ideal world, it would, we would be able to come together and compromise, but unfortunately, there are just certain people who aren't even willing to compromise. So, that's why we're heading more towards the fighting route.
my heart breaks for every parent who has lost a son or daughter to addiction. 100,000 Americans a year are now killed from drug overdoses, largely from fentanyl pouring across our southern border. Yet the Biden administration refuses to secure the border and save American lives.
Yeah, no. Securing the border isn't going to protect people from bringing drugs in. Like, people bring drugs in through legal ports of entry all the time. That's how they mostly get them in.
Lives. And after years of Democrat attacks on law enforcement and calls to defund the police, violent criminals roam free, while law-abiding families live in fear. Beyond our border, from Afghanistan to Ukraine, from North Korea to Iran, President Biden's weakness puts our nation and the world at risk. And the president's refusal to stand up to China, our most formidable adversary, is dangerous and unacceptable. President Biden is unwilling to defend our border.
Actually, no, Democrats help to fund the police even more. But yeah, that is a common talking point. Democrats defunding the police. Yeah, no. If only.
Defend our skies and defend our people. He is simply unfit to serve as commander-in-chief. And while you reap the consequences of their failures, the Biden administration seems more interested in woke fantasies than the hard reality Americans face every day. Most
Oh,
Americans simply want to live their lives in freedom and peace. But we are under attack in a left-wing culture war we didn't start and never wanted to fight.
I mean, I don't know, like, it's a little, both sides kind of started the culture war. It was not just the Democrats. There's definitely been some snowflakey behavior from the right as well. If you want an example, just look at the M&M's mascots. I mean, Tucker Carlson and, other people like him were crying about how, oh no, this M&M isn't wearing boots anymore. She's not sexy enough now. She's not feminine enough now. Oh, and now there's like a non-binary or whatever it was, M&M. It's like a trans or non-binary M&M or something like that. And they got mad about that and got all butthurt about that. Snowflakey tried to cancel M&Ms. No, Republicans are the ones banning books. I don't know anywhere. I haven't heard anything about any Democrats banning books, but I have heard about the Republicans, banning books involving any kind of, LGBTQ references. So, I mean, they say it's about sexuality, but come on, they're not banning books about heterosexual people or cisgendered people being cisgendered. They're banning books about being gay or trans. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't say Republicans keep kids safe at all. There's plenty of reasons for that being the case. Oh yeah, not those sultry books.
Every day we are told we must partake in their rituals, salute their flags, and worship their false idols. All while big government colludes with big tech to strip away the most American thing there is, your freedom of speech.
Oh no, not conflating terms of service to the Constitution. No, not again. Y'all need to stop doing this. Private companies have the right to have their own terms of service for their users so that their platforms can stay manageable. If they didn't have terms of service, there would be all kinds of horrible things on social media that people would be unwillingly exposed to. And, it's not overprotectionism. I'm talking about things like, illegal things, like things involving, children, and I'm not going to say what it is, but it's not that they don't have to follow the Constitution. It's that the Constitution only applies to government action being taken against somebody for their speech. So banning someone off of Twitter is not action from the government. It is action from a private company. They still have to follow the laws, and companies obviously have to follow the laws within the Constitution. But the First Amendment doesn't apply to private businesses. Like, private businesses in general can choose not to serve you for any reason, really. I mean, not like any reason. Like, they can't discriminate against you on like your race or, in some places, your like sexual orientation or gender identity or anything like that. Or disability, there's all kinds of things you can't discriminate against. But other than those outlined things, yeah, like, you can say no shirt, no shoes, no service. That's not in the Constitution, but that's still a rule of their business that they're not going to serve you if you don't have a shirt or shoes. Yeah, you can go to Parlor if you want your free speech, yeah.
That's not normal. It's crazy. And it's wrong. Make no mistake. Republicans will not surrender this fight. We will lead with courage and do what's right, not what's politically correct or convenient. Republicans believe in an America where strong families thrive in safe communities.
Yeah, okay.
Where jobs are abundant and paychecks are rising. Where the freedom our veterans shed their blood to defend is the birthright of every man, woman, and child. These are the principles Republican governors are fighting for, And in Washington, under the leadership of Senate Republicans and Speaker Kevin McCarthy, we will hold the Biden administration accountable. Down
Okay. Accountable for what?
the street from where I sit is my alma mater, Little Rock Central High. As a student there, I will never forget watching my dad, Governor Mike Huckabee, and President Bill Clinton hold the doors open to the Little Rock Nine.
Yeah, accountability is good.
Doors that 40
Accountability is good, but I'm simply asking the question, what are we holding him accountable for? I'm not saying he shouldn't be held accountable. He should. I just want to know what she's talking about, basically. Like, what did he do that she's holding him accountable for? Oh, I guess all this stuff she said that, some of it isn't true and some of it just isn't Joe Biden's fault, but
40 years earlier had been closed to them because they were black. Today, those children once barred from the schoolhouse are now heroes memorialized in bronze at our state house. I'm proud of the progress our country has made, and I believe giving every child access to a quality education, regardless of their race or income, is the civil rights issue of our day. Tomorrow, I will unveil an education package that will be the most far-reaching, bold, conservative education reform in the country. My plan empowers parents with real choices, improves literacy and career readiness, and
Oh, really? I mean, that hasn't been shown yet, but I guess we'll see.
helps put a good teacher in every classroom by increasing their starting salary from one of the lowest to one of the highest in the nation.
Okay, that's
Here
not
in
bad
Arkansas and across America, Republicans are working to end the policy of trapping kids in failing schools and sentencing them to a lifetime of poverty.
I hope she's also going to, increase funding in the lower funded schools because, if the schools themselves don't have the proper funding, then paying the teachers more is great, but it's not going to fix all of the problems within the school system.
We will educate, not indoctrinate our kids, and put students on a path to success. It's time for a new generation to lead. This is our moment. This is our opportunity. A new generation born in the waning decades of the last century, shaped by economic booms and stock market busts, forged by the triumph of the Cold War and the tragedy of 9/11. A generation brimming with passion and new ideas to solve age-old problems. A generation moored to our deepest values and oldest traditions, yet unafraid to challenge the present order and find a better way forward. If we seize this moment together, America can once again be the land of the free and the home of the brave. During my 2.5 years at the White House, I traveled on every foreign trip with the president.
Okay, so what she meant by not indoctrinating, no, Democrats are not indoctrinating people in their schools. What she's referring to is simply, allowing kids to be exposed to, mainly, LGBTQ lifestyles, for one. Just having a teacher who, when the kids ask, oh, do you have a boyfriend? And she says, no, I have a girlfriend. That she thinks that that's not okay. That should just be banned. Shouldn't be allowed to discuss that. She thinks that's indoctrination. And then with the CRT, she thinks teaching about, systemic inequalities is indoctrination. When it's not. It's just exposing children to more of the facts and less of the propaganda that has been taught in schools in the past. And I'm not saying all education is propaganda. There's plenty of valuable education out there, but especially in terms of things like history, the way I was taught history was very different from, like, not very different, but I wasn't exposed to different perspectives of history. I was exposed to the white perspective of history. And that is a very different perspective than the perspective of people of color throughout history. So she basically thinks that teaching kids that is going to make white kids feel guilty for being white, which just isn't even true. As long as, assuming it's taught properly, of course. I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't, bad lessons out there. Of course there's bad lessons out there in any subject. But if taught properly, no, white kids are not being made to feel guilty.
A trip I will never forget was on December 25th of 2018. My husband Brian and I had just cleaned up wrapping paper that was shoved into every corner of our house, thanks to our 3 kids. When I had to walk out on my own family's Christmas, unable to tell them where I was going that night, because the place I'd be traveling was so dangerous, they didn't want anybody to know that the president was going to be on the ground, even for a few hours. We boarded Air Force One in complete and total darkness. There were no lights on the plane, no lights on the runway. Our phones and computers shut down and turned in. We were going completely off the grid. Nearly 12 hours later, in the pitch black of night, we landed in the war-torn part of western Iraq. It was again a similar scene. No lights on the plane, no lights on the runway. The only thing you could see was coming from about a mile away in a dining hall where hundreds of troops who were in the fight against ISIS had gathered expecting to celebrate Christmas with senior military leadership from around the region. They had absolutely no idea that the president and first lady were about to walk into that room. And when they did, it was a sight and a scene and a sound I hope I never forget. The room erupted. Men and women from every race, religion, and region, every political party, every demographic you can imagine, started chanting in perfect unison over and over and over again, USA, USA, USA.
Yeah.
It was an absolutely perfect picture of what makes our country great. One of the young soldiers yelled from the back, "Mr. President, I re-enlisted in the military because of you." And the president said, "And son, I'm here because of you." Shortly after, that young soldier came up to me. He said, "Sarah, you have a tough job." I told him, "What I do is nothing. You take bombs and bullets. That's a tough job." And in a moment that I know I'll cherish for the rest of my life, that soldier reached up and he pulled the Brave Rifles patch he wore on his shoulder, and he placed it into my hand, a sign of ultimate respect. And he said, "Sarah, we are in this together." Overwhelmed with emotion and speechless, I just hugged him with tears in my eyes and a grateful heart for our heroes who keep us free. That young man and everyone who has served before him, all of those who serve alongside him, and the thousands we know who will be called upon to serve after him, deserve to know they have a country and a community back home doing our part in the fight for freedom. America is great because we are free. But today, our freedom is under attack, and the America we love is in danger. President Biden and the Democrats have failed you, and it's time for a change. A new generation of Republican leaders are stepping up, not to be caretakers of the status quo, but to be change makers for the American people. We know not what the future holds, but we know who holds the future in his hands. And with God as our witness, we will show the world that America is still the place where freedom reigns and liberty will never die. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.
All right. So I think that's all we've got for today for our live. Once again, I'm Katie. This is KSSP Podcast. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and obviously here on Twitch. It's KSSP Podcast, no spaces. So if you're interested in looking us up, feel free, show your support. We love you guys. We definitely appreciate your contribution in Secret Service to the dialogue. I really did enjoy chatting with you today. And, yeah.